All right, I'm delighted to introduce our speaker for the day, and I am afraid I've been remiss in introducing her in the past because I haven't been giving her her full due. This is Dr. Rita Conrad, who's going to speak to us now. Yes, you didn't know that? Yeah. Anyway, Rita inspires me, and I appreciate that. So thank you, Rita. Come on.
Thank you, Brian. Sheila stole my line. I feel good. Today, as many of you know, the topic that I'm going to have, the title is Accepting the Fifth. And as someone reminded me before church, it has nothing to do with alcohol. Although ever since you've said that now, it's like, well, I will accept. And it has nothing to do with a court of law. So the seed of what I'm going to talk about today actually started a couple of weeks ago at the end of July, on July 31st, with something I heard here in church. It was the last Sunday of the month, the fifth Sunday of the month. And as we do every Sunday, as we did today, we read the corresponding unity principle for that Sunday, the fifth principle. But the difference was that for the first time in all the years I've been attending Unity, I heard Unity's fifth principle as if I'd never heard it before. And in my head, I did not hear it as a nice, gentle, peaceful affirmation, but a commandment. And I think I actually heard a thunderclap on that Sunday when we read together, knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. As I contemplated in the week following that Sunday, why I was so stunned to actually hear that principle as opposed to doing the usual lip service that I do to it when it appears on the screen. I was reading Walking a Sacred Path by the honorary canon, the Reverend Lauren Artress, who is the canon of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. And in her chapter entitled New Pilgrims, New Paths, she describes the difference between a spiritual tourist and a spiritual pilgrim. The tourist observes, the pilgrim participates. Many of the years I've been attending Unity, I think I've been more of a spiritual tourist, coming to church, observing what others said, repeating what I was told to say, but not always taking it into my being. Reading the fifth principle and thinking, oh yeah, that's on my to-do list. I ought to get there maybe in 2052. With the excuse that I probably didn't know enough about the principles to really live them the way other people lived them. I've vacillated between being a tourist and a pilgrim all these years. Usually I've had a spiritual practice at home while lovingly sitting in the back of the church and being a tourist. Not that everybody sitting in the back of the church is a tourist. Just me, just saying. It's only been in the last couple of years that I stepped fully into being a spiritual pilgrim. As Lauren Artress writes in Walking a Sacred Path, the shift from tourist who comes with an interested eye to pilgrim who comes with a searching heart makes all the difference in the world. The spiritual hunger of the pilgrim has three major facets. We need healing, we seek self-knowledge, and we long to be co-creators with divine forces. In other churches I've attended, I was sometimes asked, do you accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior? Because that was key to the perspective of that particular group. But in Unity, I had never asked myself, until that Sunday, until now, do you accept the fifth principle? Do you accept the responsibility that comes with that? Because that's at the heart of us. The heart of practical Christianity is the doing. That's the all of what Charles and Myrtle Fillmore did. They discovered something about healing that they wanted to share. They went on to contemplate and to discover and evolve their spiritual practices, and they simply kept sharing their journey. Whatever they knew at that particular point in that journey, that's what they shared. Did they know all the spiritual principles and all the laws and everything before they began sharing with others? No. They were as much in discovery mode as Eric Butterworth wrote about Jesus in The Flow of Life when he said Jesus discovered his divinity. The Fillmores lived freely in the flow of life wherever it was taking them. And oftentimes they had no idea where it was going. And they shared it with others openly and uniquely themselves, with Charles's disclaimer of, I reserve the right to change my mind, which I find great comfort in, to recognize that whatever I know now probably won't be what I know later, and that we evolve our practices. As we know more, we live differently with an expanded awareness. That's why we talk about the same things, or it seems like we talk about the same things over and over again every Sunday, because suddenly you might hear it in a different way. Suddenly there might be a little different wrinkle there that you need to iron out and I need to iron out within ourselves. There's no wrong way to live the principles. We just live them as we know them in a particular moment. And we continue our pilgrimage. I'll admit that it's the commandment I hear in the fifth principle that makes me pause. You must step onto the spiritual path. Knowing what you know, that's the only path, the only road you can truly live. And when I think of that, it reminds me of that walking the straight and narrow path I was taught in my earlier years. And I have a sister who made the choice to become a Catholic nun at the age of 14 and has lived that life for 63 years. So I've had a front row seat to what it means to walk that spiritual path, to walk that straight and narrow path for most of my life. Lauren Artress wrote that she pictured the spiritual path as so narrow, confining, treacherous, only wide enough for one person to go in one direction. And that wasn't the spiritual path that resonated with her. And I was comforted by that as well, because it's not the one that resonates with me either. It wasn't until she saw, and I turned to my handy tech guru back there. It wasn't until she saw William Blake's revolutionary painting of Jacob's Ladder that she had a new understanding of the spiritual path. The watercolor was exhibited in the Royal Academy in 1808 and is based upon the story of Jacob in Genesis 28, verses 10 to 19. Basically, like all these biblical characters, Jacob goes on a journey. He lays down to sleep. He has a dream. And in this dream, he sees a ladder going from earth to heaven with angels climbing and descending it, and God standing at the very top of it, talking to him and telling him, your life is going to be richly blessed, as will your family and all the families of the earth, everyone blessed. You have nothing to worry about. I will be right beside you always. And when Jacob wakes up, he's stunned because for the first time he realizes that God can be right there where he is, and he stands where the house of God is and the gate of heaven. Ed Rabel, a teacher of metaphysics at Unity Village in the 70s, said that metaphysically the passage means that we are in heaven and on earth at the same time. And we've heard that before. The ladder represents the step-by-step ascension from material to spiritual consciousness, with the angels or messengers representing divine thought, divine ideas, words of truth necessary to unfold our higher consciousness. William Blake was not the first one to paint Jacob's Ladder. There were lots of versions of Jacob's Ladder, but all of them had that same ladder that we think of with the ladder, that straight, upward, one way with the angels. He was the first one to paint it in a spiral, where all beings, you'll notice it's not just winged ones that are walking this path. And very often, people are not walking it alone. They're walking it with someone else. When Blake painted Jacob's Ladder, the Christian church, much as it does today, thought of heaven as up there, earth down here, nothing in between. In Blake's day, it was believed that angels flew down from heaven on their wings, and those who had died, who were worthy, were flown up by the angels back to heaven. Some key figures like Jesus ascended in a more significant way, but there was little thought of a two-way wingless route between earth and heaven. No way for mere mortals to go back and forth on that stairway until William Blake painted it. And when Lauren Artress saw it, she said it communicated to her that it wasn't the spiritual path that was straight and narrow, but wide as a 4-lane highway, graciously curving and flowing and demonstrating, expressing the divine generosity of life. Not such a scary path after all. In Unity, we teach the 5 principles to our children as God is, I am, I think, I pray, I live. Principle 5 for children and teens is written as, I do and give my best by living the truth I know. I make a difference. I live, all capital letters. It doesn't sound so hard when I hear it like that. It sounds natural. I live. And over the last year and a half, I've been taking spiritual education and enrichment courses through Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute. And I began that journey just with fun and curiosity and suddenly it snowballed into awe and the realization of the depth of life and what being on my spiritual path means to me. I've taken 22 spiritual education and enrichment courses, and in the 21st of the 22nd that I finished in July, the final project was to develop a demonstration plan. I was to prove how I was going to handle the 5th principle that I just heard for the first time. I was to take a specific situation that I was currently trying to resolve and determine the specific principles I would apply to it. First, I had to be an observer of myself. What was I feeling, thinking, sensing, intuiting about that situation? And then I had to consider the obstacles to resolving the situation using, on the next slide, yes, thank you. Using FARU, F-A-R-U. This was the acronym the instructor came up with to help us remember as students how to identify the obstacles. Fear, am I feeling any fear around this situation? What am I afraid will happen or not happen if I resolve that situation? A for attachment. What am I attached to around this situation? R for resistance. It's remarkable to me that my first name begins with an R and my major obstacle in life is R as well. Resistance. Am I resisting resolving this in any way? How is that showing up? What benefit do I think I'm getting from resisting? Because clearly in my life, I think there's a lot of benefit to resisting because I do it first as a reflex. Am I resisting something that is actually an aspect of myself? And finally, U for unforgiveness. What was I not forgiving that was blocking me from resolving this situation? Only after answering those questions did I know what the situation was really about, as opposed to what it appeared to be. And as you all know, when you look at a situation, it's never what you think it is. It's always something beneath it. And this helped me identify what that was. And then it clarified what spiritual principles to use. So I found in myself that what I was doing is not really thinking fully about the situation and trying to apply something that had nothing to do with the actual situation. You follow that? Mark Hicks, the founder and developer of truthunity.net, that's a site dedicated to the classical works of Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, posted the following note on the site in February 28th, 2021. He's discussing in that post the movie Integrate Silence. It's about the life of Carthusian monks who live in an isolated valley near Grenoble in the French Alps. The Carthusian disciple is recognized as the most severe of Roman Catholic monastic orders. Visitation is limited to 2 visits per year with close family, and all social interaction prohibited except for a common Sunday meal, followed by a short 1 hour of conversation. I remember when my sister was in cloister and we can only go to visit her maybe 2 or 3 times a year, same kind of principle. Except for these limited moments, the monks remain silent, as the title of the film suggests. Hicks begins with a quote from one of the monks. "Behold, I am become human. If you should not want to join me in becoming God, you would do me wrong." Hicks writes that the life of the monks can be distilled into 5 short words from that phrase. Join me in becoming God. He goes on to say, it's not only the monk's life that's distilled as those 5 words, it's all of Christian life. And the essence of Christian life is join me in becoming God. What we learn from the movie is that at its essence, the monks are not there to renounce, to suffer, to learn, to be enlightened. They are not there to be righteous nor to judge. Rather, they are simply there to join with Jesus in becoming God. Hicks says further that if that's true, that the essence of the Christian life is to become God, then let me make a very provocative statement. Join me in becoming God could be the best opening statement for any Unity minister on Sunday morning. Further, the essence of our life as metaphysical Christians is not enlightenment, nor healing, nor prosperity. It's not community, nor forgiveness, nor social justice, nor all the other things we talk about. Certainly not morality or righteousness or judgment. We do not work for peace, Hicks says. In fact, like the monks, we do not work at all. What we have at its essence is not a work, but rather an invitation. An invitation from Christ to join in becoming God. To the extent that it's work, we consider it the work of consciousness. And that's similar to what Reverend Ellen Delbenport is talking about in her book, The 5 Principles, when she writes, the good news is that we can't not live the 5th principle. We can't not live the truth. It's spiritual law. It's in all of us. It's everywhere, all the time. And that the first 4 principles provide a handy checklist before we take action. And those are those questions. So, do I affirm divine intelligence and love in this situation? Do I remember my own divinity and that of others? Do I take responsibility for attracting this situation into my experience and know that its outcome for me will be matched with my thought and feeling about it? Have I aligned myself with God, the universe, the good, and received guidance before I act? That's the one I always forget. I jump right into it before I've asked God for any kind of guidance. As Larry mentioned last week, we attended the Fillmore Festival at Unity Village. We did it remotely. And the Reverend Sheila McKeithen said during the keynote the very first night, all suffering is caused by forgetfulness. So when we find ourselves at the gates to the land of suffering, this checklist might come in handy for us to use, to remember, and step away from that suffering. So like Lauren Artress, I went in search of my own artistic muse for Jacob's Ladder, and I found it in the wisdom of Led Zeppelin. But don't worry, I'm not going to play it. In our house, if my mother had ever heard Led Zeppelin, she would have called for an exorcism. There was no parental screaming in our house after my older brother left the house, because we teenagers of the 70s had something you teenagers of the 60s didn't have: headphones. And all I had to do was keep my Carpenters album displayed and I could listen to whatever I wanted. My mother was never unless it got really loud through the headphones. So Led Zeppelin wrote, thank you, Stairway to Heaven. Stairway to Heaven to me is as beautiful and as meaningful a vision of the spiritual path we walk as Blake's painting was to Lauren Artress. In case you've never heard the words of Stairway to Heaven, there are words to it. It's about a woman who has everything she wants, and now she wants to buy a stairway to heaven, because what else is left in life? In the song, she's asked, don't you know your stairway lies on the whispering wind? It's flowing all around you. You don't have to buy it. The singer goes on to wonder about all the disturbing things he's seeing in life, much as we do today, but is assured that a new day will dawn. It ends with the words, and if you listen very hard, the truth will come to you at last. In other words, you'll walk your own stairway with that truth without having to buy it. The Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard said, every human being comes to earth with sealed orders. And I've realized that all these years, I've been taking that envelope with my sealed orders and holding it up to my forehead like Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show when he played Conrad the Magnificent. And I've been trying to just see into that envelope what's in there. And the truth has come to me at last, that what's been in the envelope all along was the fifth principle. The fifth principle. So the fifth principle will not be ignored. It will not be procrastinated or only remembered on any particular Sunday. It's right before us, all around us, everywhere we look, within us as our spiritual DNA. It is the power of life. We only need to flip the switch of acceptance to move from observing spiritual tourist to the participating spiritual pilgrim as we walk that wide highway of Jacob's ladder on our own stairway to heaven. So if the fifth principle has been on your to-do list, I'm going to invite you to accept that knowledge of these spiritual principles is not enough. We must live them. We must do them. We do them. It's not just our life that benefits from this, by the way. There are others we have not met, and with that we may never meet, who are waiting for us, for each one of us to wake up, to show up in this life, living who we really are. As Christine read in today's daily word, Genesis 23:16, and I was about 3/4 of this talk done, and I went, gee, I wonder what the daily word for the day is going to be. And I went to it, and it's from Jacob's ladder, the story of Jacob's ladder. Then Jacob woke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. But we do know. Join me in becoming God. And so it is.